you think of single mom, you just think of struggle.
Going through my 20s, being a single mom, so many people made me feel bad about it.
I've been on repeat, make money, pay the bills, take care of the kid. It's really easy to put personal growth on hold.
So I am about to take a road trip with 2 other single moms.
Road Trip Nation, here I am.
And we're gonna interview successful professionals.
Strong single moms that have faced the same obstacles.
I'm hoping to leave all the self-doubt.
Being a single mom, there's pressure when it comes to your decisions. Like, what if I make the wrong one?
You're doing great. You only have 2 hours and 49 minutes. I'm feeling a little lost, and maybe I'll find an answer or a door to go through on this road trip.
The most important decisions you're going to make in your life, the ones with risk, the ones with fear, are the most important to lean into because it allows you to expand as a human.
Is there any words of wisdom for other single moms working towards their path?
More than anything, I think it's just about figuring out your purpose. And I think once you can see how your purpose can impact something outside of yourself, then you're on the right path.
I want my kids to see that I took this time away because mom is becoming a better mom.
We absolutely have the power to change anything that we don't like about our life. It's just a matter of being willing to believe that you can.
You have to really think about what you're calling into your life and be clear when you're trying to manifest a path for it.
Single moms, we are resilient, and I am so proud to be a part of that community. I'm so proud to have that label.
This is helping me come out of my box more and show my kids that it's important to try new things. I don't know who said do one thing every day that scares you, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be
I'm gonna remember these connections forever.
I'm just excited for everything coming up.
I'm just ready to be my kids' #1 fan. I'm ready to be my own #1 fan. I'm ready for the world.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I mean, it's pretty busy here. I'm sure it's busy there, but homeschooling. I told my kids and the dogs to be quiet because I was gonna be over here, in here. So
one of the things that
everybody listens.
We're going to jump into the larger conversation, but one of the things I've been saying around homeschooling is just making sure that people understand when you have young kids, it really isn't independent learning. There has to be an adult there with them. Otherwise, they are not doing whatever's supposed to be happening on the screen. And so it's an additional taxing layer of trying to navigate and figure out kind of what that means. And they know you're at home. So, yeah.
No, I mean, I've had to bring someone in actually 3 or 4 days a week because that's what was happening. I don't know what they were doing. They were just clowning around. I was just like, what is going on? And, they were twins, so they were in cahoots a little bit. So I was just like, I say, I can't do this. I need help.
And we had to do the same thing. I mean, two people can't pretend to be engaged in something and also, have a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kind of trying to do anything meaningful. How old are your kids?
They're 10. They're twins. They're 10-year-old twins.
Nice. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So they're a little, but the dodging, it's real. And I was like, "Are you doing your work?" They're like, "Yes, yes." Turns out, she's going for a walk outside. I'm like, "Where is she?" She's down the street. She's like, "I just need to get out." I'm just like, no. So
it's real. It's real. Historical times on every level, internally and externally. So what we're going to do, I'm really excited to be here today and be in conversation. In some ways, I'm glad that it's Friday. It's an opportunity to kind of sunset on, for me, what has been a particularly kind of challenging week, even within the context of COVID. But for me to also just do a reset and just to remind myself that if I could be so bold, so many have come before me. And oftentimes in this moment, I'm calling on my ancestors, my elders, et cetera, and just reminding that they have done really hard things. I can do really hard things. And it's important for me to be present as a leader, especially with positional power, to be able to influence and not just to respond. So I appreciate you kind of making time today, Nicole. So we have some questions that we're going to talk about. I'm going to engage, you're going to engage, we kind of go back and forth. What I really think that a lot of folks don't have a chance to see is for leaders, especially women leaders, especially Black female leaders, to be in conversation with each other. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to be able to bring all of our identities to bear within the context of how we are leading and showing up within the context of this moment. But to remember that this is not just an intellectual practice. This is deeply personal for us. The things that you're hearing about and we're trying to strategize around for our organizations are deeply representative of our families and our homes. And so I'm excited about the moment the opportunity rather, to be able to do that. So you are infamous for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons that you are pretty renowned is this phrase, this term that you coined, I would say it's about 8 or 9 years ago, secession. And so what I would love to do is just to be able to kind of step back and anchor people in what that is in layman's terms, but also talking about it within the context of 2020, because you coined the term, my understanding, Nicole, when the last, what we thought was the most aggressive downturn in our country. And so let me step back. And so just want to really kind of anchor people kind of there. So what secession for, kitchen table talk?
So in very simple terms, it just means that during this economic downturn and that women are disproportionately impacted and are bearing the brunt of much of the job losses. So in this period, more than 11 million women have lost jobs compared to about 9 million men. And in sectors where women are most likely to be employed, so service sector, leisure, hospitality, education, healthcare, those are the sectors that have lost the most jobs since the start of the pandemic.
And the secession part of it, I would imagine, is because when we just anchored around just recession, we almost think that there's an equitable impact. And this is an opportunity to really kind of pull out and make sure and illuminate that gender shows up differently in our country in a variety of places, and it's also showing up differently within the context of a recession and a downturn.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So really wanting to impact the disproportionate impact of the economic downturn on women, not only in terms of job loss, but many of the women that have been most impacted, that's women earning less than $40,000 a year, were already struggling before the pandemic and have been struggling since the last recession. Many of them are women of color. So the term secession really highlights that, the disproportionate impact. But one of the things I think it's really important to do is to center the experiences of women of color because they are overrepresented in the service sector, in those sectors that are hardest hit, less likely to have savings, face housing and food insecurity. So all these things are compounded during moments of economic downturn.
Yeah. So let's stay there for a second. So one of the things I've been trying to illuminate for folks on my team, but also supporters, et cetera, is that we're so focused on this moment. We're so focused on this moment, but there are larger implications that this moment actually are going to bubble up. And so I would love for you to, and I keep saying this because of your expertise within the context of economics, et cetera, for us to be able to step back is, yes, it's challenging now, but what are people missing within the context of this moment, especially through the lens of race and gender? If you're able to forecast 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years within that. So what should people kind of make sure and understand and know?
So I want to look back, for example, for a minute. So looking back, what we know is that many of the families that have been hit hardest during, this current pandemic or recession were struggling before. So they were having trouble with care. They were struggling to pay their bills. Again, eviction, not really being able to get a foothold in terms of their economic security. And so in this moment, it's all been exacerbated. And when we look forward, we know that, or at least I believe that economic recovery will be slow. We don't have a viable social safety net program in the U.S. Anymore. Less than 3% of people receive cash benefits, and as you know, housing lists are years long in terms of for families, and so all these things matter. We know that many of the jobs. I can just give you a really quick anecdote. I was in Las Vegas about a month ago for my sister's wedding, and my stepsister, who was employed with the same company for 20 years in food service. So you can imagine, and she is a single mom with a son. She has a son. And so as you can imagine, over 20 years, she's gotten gradual wage increases. But just like that, she lost her job. No prospects, everybody is unemployed, and re-entering the workforce is going to be hard. Re-entering at the same wage is going to be hard. She's probably going to have to start all over in terms of her earnings. And then also she's responsible for a 10-year-old child that she has to homeschool. So these are the burdens when I look to the future that I think will impact women's economic security long term.
Do you have any ideas or thoughts on things that can be explored or might be strengthened to be able to ensure that there are stronger safety nets for folks like your stepsister, et cetera, things that we can kind of think about and do locally, nationally, et cetera?
So at the national level, it's very clear that we need a national care infrastructure beginning from birth to 12, so that families have the support they need, and women and families can, women can get back to work. For women who cannot get back to work because of caretaking responsibilities, they need to have economic supports. That is not income or income driven or asset driven. Economic impact payments make sense in this moment. So, paid sick leave, paid family leave, those are all policies that we can implement now. Employers can also play a role in terms of making sure women can re-enter the workforce. And I know I'm talking because I have a lot of ideas. But in this moment, what we know is that some of the jobs have disappeared for good. Those jobs are not coming back. And so some women will have to enter new sectors altogether. So we need to also make provisions for education and training for women to go back to school to get certification so that they can regain their economic security. And those are the kind of plans and ideas that are really going to make the difference for women who have lost their jobs over the last couple of months and facing and still steeped in economic precarity.
Nicole, I think we're at this really interesting place in our country, in our history, but I often want people to know that we have done, the phrase I've used often, we've behaved magnificent before. We have engaged as a country in the future in really concrete ways before. And so let's not catch amnesia. One of the framing of today's conversation was around, Black women, new CEOs, first generation experience poverty. And in a lot of ways, I wonder often, and it's a crestfalling moment, if our stories are actually possible within the context of how we think about mobility today, whether it's the GI Bill, whether it's Pell Grants, whether it's Perkins loans, whether it's arts programs in schools, all of these things now that have been deduced to a conversation around handout. And they were real kind of investments and bets in the future that have produced some incredible mobility in the Black, Brown, Latinx community and just communities in general. And so when you talk about some of the things that you're exploring, I think it's important for folks to remember that these are new ways of behaving. These aren't new ways of kind of thinking about it. In some ways, we've lost the momentum of this. And so I'm curious to know kind of how that resonates with you, sits with you within the context of that.
So I just think that we are, one, this is an extraordinary moment. And there is a need to remember that, we've tried some of these things before and they've worked. Yep. But what I would say is that we've tried them, but we really didn't invest in them. So there were things that we said we wanted to do, especially around addressing poverty. We talk about the New Deal. But let's just say that the investments did not match the need. And so many of the ideas that people like yourself and I and other thinkers had didn't really fully become realized or actualized. And then not only they not become actualized, many of the people who have fought against those programs just systematically dismantled those programs over time. And that's what we see when I think about the safety net in the 1996 Welfare Reform Act. That was a systemic dismantling of a program that was meant to be a lifeline for many working women and families. And so here we are in the middle of a pandemic with no safety net, no lifeline for families, and inaction at the federal level. So there are things that we've tried, but again, the investments were minuscule in terms of the need. So a lot of the stuff wasn't actualized. And so what I'm hoping in this moment is that we can not only imagine bold program solutions and, really lift up the things that we know that works, but put the money to those programs, put the investments there, without regard. All of a sudden, there's all this conversation about austerity and we can't spend this much money. I mean, like you said, handouts. And, it's just a misplacement of values.
One of the things that I love to talk about is that, and dissuade people of this idea that poverty is an economic issue. I actually don't believe it's an economic issue. It kind of goes to your point regarding social systems and social safety nets. I actually think it's a social justice issue. You can't have an unjust housing system without an unjust public educational system. You can't have an unjust criminal justice system without an unjust health justice system. They have to work in concert with each other. We have to understand the ecosystem in which we have fed or underfed, to your point, that allows us to sit in this place during a time where people need a net. They need a series of support systems that frankly aren't there to be able to hold them the way that they need to. And I think the interesting thing, Nicole, is that I think we're seeing people see the disparity and the safety nets all up and down the continuum of the economic cycle. And so I think there are middle and upper middle class folks who are experiencing the disparity in childcare for the first time in a really intimate way that creates an opportunity for a different conversation. I think there are folks, middle and upper middle class people, who are starting to say, hey, I can't suburb my way out of the criminal justice system, that this is something outside of just kind of a geographic kind of frame within that. Does that resonate with you? Kind of what are your thoughts regarding kind of that, those ideas?
So I love this idea of suburbing your way out of the criminal justice system, which is just a metaphor, euphemism for turn a blind eye to all the things that are happening by changing my location geographically or being insulated. So I do think that we are in a moment where, especially with the issue of childcare, myself, I feel very fortunate. I earn a great living. I work, I can work remotely, and I'm still having care issues. I'm still being impacted. I'm still expected to perform, work 50 hours a week, and then also somehow homeschool two unruly 10-year-olds. And so, and then you have lower wage women, working women who have to leave the house in order to get paid, and so they're facing their own care predicament. But across the a through line is that there's a broken system here that's not working for anybody, particularly working moms. So it's like we're all fed up now. We're like, this is not my individual problem. This is a systemic problem. And the same thing like you pointed out with criminal, the criminal legal system. We're realizing that our fates are tied. and connected. And so it's a systemic, and it's not an individual like that bad person. This is like a system that is rotten.
You talked a little bit about kind of running an organization right now. I and also running an organization right now. And one of the things that happens is that for us to be running nonprofit organizations is that we rely upon philanthropy. We rely upon this philanthropic structure that is, let's be honest, disproportionately homogenous in nature, disproportionate conservative in nature. And one of the things that I'd like to spend some time with is I've been thinking about this whole idea that the challenges that we find ourselves in as a country, as a community, as a sector, is disproportionately, as you talked about, impacting lower income, Black, Latinx, Indigenous communities. However, when you think about who runs national kind of nonprofit organizations, who's charged with being the architects of solutions, there is an intellectual proximity to those communities. I think there's a real unique opportunity for philanthropy to look to the few of us who are not just intellectually proximate, but also personally proximate to those communities, to not only be the recipients of solution, but solution architects. And one of the things I just want to spend some time with is, what does it mean to lead an organization at this time as a woman, as a Black woman, with who has been deeply proximate to a lot of the challenges that folks are grappling with right now?
So I was trying to think where I was going to start. I was like, where do I start with this big old question? But so I want to first start out by saying I feel very fortunate to be leading in this big way in this moment. And it feels like an opportunity of a lifetime, or my work life at least. And I actually don't think when I was hired, they knew that I would lead in this exact way, and that I would, bring IWPR along and ask them tough questions and say, this is how we need to approach these issues and how engaged we need to be. And it's been really good that the staff, allowed me to lead in that way, but also a board of directors who were also on board. I was I was on a funder panel. It was a big funder panel, and it was kind of like this, where it was a panel, but I couldn't see who else was in the room. I just knew that they were funders. And I tell you, Chastity, I was so mad in this conversation because it was a very sterile conversation where one woman, it was a white woman, so I want to, because I think that's important. She says, well, this, my voice, this is a moment I remember a couple years ago. I was just so unsafe in philanthropy to talk about race. And so you had to use this coded language. You couldn't really talk about it. And so here we are, in this moment. And I'm thankful that philanthropy has come along. And I was so mad. So then they sort of pan to me and they say, well, what do you think about? I said, you know what? I said, this is ridiculous. I said, the thing about it is that many of us have been doing this work with no money, no funding for 2 decades. I've been doing this work for 2 decades. And, I know that many of us have done this work and centered it around race and, the most impacted, and gotten $0 or very little, few dollars. And so now, because it feels safe to invest, you want to find the best racially, program. And I said, welcome to the party. And I literally, I don't know, I can tell you, I do not know who was in that room, but I was like, I cannot let this moment pass, because many of organizations have folded that were led by really brilliant people of color, because philanthropy could not get on board and felt very scared to talk about the issues that we know are at the heart of all of this. But you know what, this is how I'm using my platform to sort of name that.
And Nicole, I think that's what I've been also calling myself to do. I've been more vulnerable as a leader within the last 6 to 7 months than I've been in my 2-decade career as well. But I think it has demanded that. I want people to know that what we're talking about sits in front of you. I want you to know that you have to not only want a group of people, a sector, folks grappling with these challenges to win. That means you also have to want me to win too. You can't be thinking about gender inequity and not think about the intersection of race and gender. You heard me talk about Moya Bailey and the whole misogynoir kind of frame that people, there is something uniquely different about holding this space as a woman, but also kind of as a Black woman within that. And I think the thing that we are trying to understand is the unconscious bias that also comes with leadership, but also visioning. And so one of the things that happens in philanthropy, in my opinion, in my experience, is there's a need for a dissertation if you have an idea. And it's not enough for your experience and your strategic thinking to be at the helm of it. And I have been with other peers with no melanin who have literally written something on a napkin and engendered millions of dollars and said, we'll worry about the proposal later. And so I do believe there's a moment for us in philanthropy to center leaders like ourselves, but leaders of colors who are also proximate to the challenges as solution architects and not just recipients of how other folks are thinking about the challenges in our country. And I'll step off my soapbox kind of right there. Anything else to add there before I move to our last and final comment?
Somebody said, they asked me to make the case for, they said, make the case for pay equity for women. I said, no, why? Why should I be making the case for pay equity? You know, people should be paid the same. You know, I don't have to convince you of like women's, you know, contribution to the workforce. And that's how I feel about, you know, working with some of, you know, philanthropy. Like, it's not my job to convince you that I'm worthy of investment. It's your job to allow me to lead and trust my strategies and solutions. Again, not, you know, it's because I'm, you know, leading this organization, but also I have these other, you know, set of experiences that are informing how I'm leading. And so, you know, so even challenging that. And frankly, I've started, you know, especially, I mean, and I believe I'm at IWPR, which I want to be very honest, is a think tank. And I'm the first woman of color, but it was led for about 30 years by a really white woman noted economist. So when I'm in the rooms and talking to philanthropy, I'm asking for big investments. You know, I'm asking for the dollars that it'll take for me to do the work, as opposed to apologizing for putting a price tag on the work and value that we bring to the table as, you know, as you said, solution architects.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So let's pivot to the final question here, where it gives you an opportunity to talk about your vision for IWPR. Kind of what's your vision for IWPR over the next year and a half?
Well, I'm really excited about how we've been engaged in this current moment, and thinking about bold solution strategies, again, rooted in the experiences of the most impacted women that you know, are my mothers, my cousins, and the people I love dearly. So I'm excited about that. And just changing the face of what this work looks like and centering those experiences. So we'll continue to do that, engage with policymakers. We just got the green light from our board to do more policy advocacy work. So we're leaning in harder to, you know, into that work. And frankly, my next goal, one of my biggest goals over the next year, is to build a dynamic, bright, diverse, sharp staff of researchers, policy advocates, and people who really understand and get the issue and proximate. And I tell you something, I've had to disrupt some, you know, because, you know, it's me, I'm at the, you know, I'm leading the organization. So the sort of coded language that gets used during hiring processes and stuff like that, I get to disrupt that and say, that sounds a little like something else is going on here. And so, and being able to bring in people who I know are passionate about the work or proximate, that the door hasn't swung open for them, and so that also is exciting to me to be able to build that kind of team.
I echo all of those sentiments, and I would add that, one of the things I'm committed to doing and excited about doing within this moment, and I keep coming back to this moment because as challenging as this moment is, this is where innovation actually resides. If you think about any kind of core moment of innovation in our history, it's always during kind of these arbitrage opportunities and making sure that I'm staying present and I am, crawl, walk, running kind of through this. But I think, my big idea is to disrupt this unconscious bias around what it means to be a single parent or woman-led household experiencing poverty. There's this whole idea that these women are stepping over crack vials, or it's such anchored in the deficit. And this whole idea that you are a great mom. And being a great mom shouldn't be in tension with pursuing socioeconomic mobility. We don't have structures in this country that allow both of those frameworks to be true. And oftentimes, a great mom is saying, I'm either going to bet on myself or I'm going to bet on my kid. And I want to create, the next chapter of Jeremiah program that allows moms to do yes and bring all of your identities to bear. You've heard me talk about, a lot of colleges and universities talk about they want the non-traditional student, but when you look at the FAFSA award letter, you see housing, you see books, you see transportation, you see tuition, but you don't see childcare. In addition to that, you're talking about moms, when are they going to be able to go to school? Disproportionately, evening and also on the weekends. What voucher programs allow that to happen? We have to understand that if we want America to look different and we want to expand the leadership tent, we have to make sure that we're making the investments. And so that's exciting to me. The second thing is around this whole poverty is not an economic issue. It's a social justice issue. And I think oftentimes we want to talk about socioeconomic mobility, but really what we want to talk about is these benchmark moments. The job won't do it. The house won't do it. There is a much larger continuum within the context of that I think is really interesting for us to look at, and playing the long game, as you talked about some of the things that we have benefited from in our own lives. And the last thing, because, I'm excited about this, is there's something about reframing what a direct service shop can be, should be, look like. And so it's typically the either direct service with small policy, or it's a policy shop that is trying to do some direct service. And I think Jeremiah program is uniquely positioned to be yes and I really want our moms and our alum to be at the nexus of that push around advocacy about rethinking what local policies could look like, feel like, sound like, that allow more people that sit at their Thanksgiving table to land in the places they are. I think there's such magic dust and mist around how do you arrive at this place. And I think we have to demystify that. This whole exceptionalism, and you want to hold up these one or two people. And I don't think we will move our communities, move our people forward. I am passionate about women. I'm passionate about Black, Brown, Latinx, Indigenous communities. And I think we need to make sure that folks understand that excellence doesn't have to have a CEO title. Excellence actually should be a much broader kind of definition. That's how we're going to kind of shift the overall landscape. And to be honest, the people we worship, the Harriets, the Fridas of the world, were pedestrian within the context of, and they did incredible things. And so I just love this whole idea of opening up the leadership tent and creating a space where moms can sit at the table of positional power, but also influence the agenda.
I just love all of that, Chastity, and I just love it all. And when I for my own self, when I think about what you said about poverty as less of a economic issue, but that it's all these other things. Like one of the things I say is poverty is the #1 barrier to escaping poverty, because it's all those things
That's a
around
t-shirt.
it.
That's a t-shirt. I love it. I love them.
You know, because we pay high, you know, poor people live in, you know, neighborhoods with, you know, failing school systems, no infrastructure. We pay higher for housing and all of these things. And so it becomes the barrier to getting, you know, to getting ahead. And so you're right that I call them connected communities, so that one, people want to stay in their communities. They're not interested in going to suburbs or living wherever. They want to stay around the people in the communities that they love. And so how do we strengthen those communities? And like you said, just support and, you know, allow women and families to receive what they need so they can do what they can to live their best life. And that sounds, and like you said, it doesn't have to be CEO or, you know, in this, you know, this position, but whatever, you know, they desire, but opening up that space for the dreams and the possibility, you know. So I'm just all about it. I want to, you know, work with you, you know, to support Jeremiah program and, you know, from, you know, our position, but also as partners and colleagues in this work who, you know, I believe share the same vision about the people that we love and communities that we care about.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you for the conversation. And I might get a little emotional, but the thing that I love about this conversation that is the canvas in which it sits is that where you begin doesn't always have to determine what the universe will actually create and manifest for you. And I'm excited to see you in the seat that you're sitting in, to be able to influence change, to reframe, author, curate the next chapter for IWPR. I think you sit on a beautiful legacy, but I think 2.0 is going to be even more gorgeous. And so I hope you call on all the ancestors, call on all that you know to be true, all those that sit at your Thanksgiving table, and know that we're rooting for you in the most incredible way.
Thank you, Chastity, and thank you for this great conversation. It's just, you know, again, I just said before, we can just take this on the road, and we can.
There you go. There you go.
But this has been really great, and you know, I know we're going to continue to stay connected and, you know, do our own work, but also work together.
All right. Take care. Talk soon. Have a good weekend. Ciao.
Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye.
Opportunities and successes I had were not meant for me alone, but were my responsibility to share with other brown-skinned individuals.
I discovered the Jeremiah program. I learned, gained enough tools to be able to really build the life that I wanted. And because of all the resources, I was able to buy my own home. I was able to finish school.
I found myself through my journey of motherhood, life skills, therapy, my college education, connections with other single mothers. I saw myself fighting for positive change and making a difference.
The reason I'm on Zoom is that you are a part of the 2020 inaugural JP Fellows Class. So let me jump in. I am formally here to invite you to be a part of the inaugural JP Fellows Class. You got it. You got it. I want you to know that this is not just about bringing a bunch of moms together, and hopefully you have felt that way. The level of intentionality, the quality of the experience is representative of your time, of your passion, and the value that I look forward to you bringing as we embark on this next chapter.
Live in the moment, absorb the experiences you're having.